Hey there, friends, family, and loved ones all. I want to stay on this Paradise story because it's about taking down California. Paradise Lost is a book by John Milton written in late 1600s about the fall of the fallen angels and cast down from heaven with the war in heaven down into earth, and they're making earth into their paradise. And that's what John Milton's book was about. John Milton died on November 8th. The attacks on Paradise were on November 8th. So before I get into just reviewing all the anomalies and proof of due and all the rest, I wanted to show you this. First, I just wanted to introduce you to retired fire captain Chief Ken Pimlott, who made some outstanding statements on the 60 Minutes Paradise Lost segment to highlight Paradise. They didn't highlight any of the other 29 fires in 9 different counties that occurred, but Trump went to Paradise. Former governor, Jesuit minister, Jerry Brown, and then gruesome Governor Newsom now, all Jesuits, all men in black, all dressed in black. It's all part of the thing, and they only went to Paradise. They didn't go to any of the other fire areas. Now, they say that 85, 86 people died when it was thousands, if not tens of thousands, and 11,000 homes were taken out in Paradise. So all these people lost their homes, had home insurance. Well, guess what? They're not getting rebuilt because Paradise is lost, right? So this is from May 2021. It's gotten worse since then. But just to highlight, the trust, they set up a trust, has spent $50 million on overhead, while the vast majority of fire victims have not received a dime. So it was in 2018, so we're starting 3 years later, 4 years later, it's even worse than that. Retired police chief petitioned a federal judge to intervene because they can't get any help. So there's $13.5 billion to be paid to 67,000 fire victims, yet very few have gotten paid. The multi-billion trust was announced in 2019. The trust has paid out $7 million out of the $13.5 billion several years later. People cannot move back. People cannot rebuild. Paradise is lost. And as Fire Chief Ken Pimlott, I tried to find the video, but I couldn't find it. He stated, well, maybe we shouldn't rebuild in fire-prone areas. And this is exactly what's happening. Meanwhile, the administrator trust, John Trotter, put Jesuit next to John Trotter and see what you find, billed at $1,500 an hour against the fire victims. And he also, the top claims administrator, makes $1,250 an hour against the people that have lost their homes forever. Here's the fire chief here. And then here's the data of the Fire Victim Trust. All right? They haven't paid out anything. I mean, here's $58 million, and they paid out $7.2 million. Why? Why have they not paid anybody out? Because they're not going to. They don't want them to build. And then Governor Gruesome, when he's doing all the LBGT and doing all this stuff against Trump and doing all this stuff, pays no attention to his home base. None. We do not have any information to provide at this time on what you're claiming or what you're saying. And it's getting worse. And just this past couple of weeks, the largest home insurers in the world, Allstate and Fireman's Fund, State Farm have announced, and Allstate, State Farm and Allstate have announced they're not going to renew any homeowner policies in California. You're done. And you can't get mortgage. You can't get a mortgage unless you have insurance. So guess what that means. As a result, thousands of consumers' wildfire-exposed communities have been dropped when their policies come up for renewal. In 2019, after 2 years, insurers refused to renew the policies, a jump of 42.7%. In 2020, 212,000 were not renewed. Okay, so they're forcing you into this federal or state government policy called the FAIR Act, and so costs are climbing. Licensed billions, 900, 200. So they say, oh, costs are going up, so yada yada. But the people aren't getting compensated in any way. And it's not just, if you think your premiums are high, it's not just here. This is going on worldwide, state by state, county by county. Florida, hurricane damage, pay about $4,000 in protection. Number of Californians will discover they can only get coverage by paying significantly higher premiums to either carriers that are licensed in other states, known as surplus lines, or California's insurers of last resort, the California, quote, FAIR plan. FAIR for who? Surplus line carriers wrote 8,000 policies, 11,000, 78.9% compared up 78.9% compared to 2017 figures. These figures were more than 3 times the new business fair saw in 2018. Now remember, the fire started in 2017 when they started the attacks. Fair's growth makes private home insurance nervous because last resort plan has limited capital. Here we go again. Here we go again. And so after months in the dark, these fire victims are not getting compensated at all. So this is floodwaters down in Central Valley in Merced County. And again, they've been displaced by floods because the town was not officially in a flood zone. Few had flood insurance. Because the town was poor, even fewer had the capital to rebuild. And because so many were undocumented, few were eligible for money from FEMA, leading to disappointment. After people recovered, many expressed frustration what few options were available. So, quote, undocumented, they were here before us. Brownskins were here before the white guys, folks. They were here first. No such thing as their illegal immigration. They were here first. State money is welcome and necessary, he said. So because you're undocumented, you don't get compensated. I mean, this goes on and on. And to delve in this to a little deeper, State Farm, which insures more property owners in California than any other company, announced last week it will no longer sell property and casualty policies in the Golden State. Allstate, the fourth largest insurer, quietly halted California sales. Their departure leaves even fewer options, where insurers have canceled more than 1 million homeowner insurance policies. Mortgage lenders require borrowers to carry insurance, but it's increasingly difficult. So the FAIR plan states high cost, bare bone insurer of last resort. Bare bone insurer of last resort. But this isn't only California, as I said. Louisiana state raised for the last resort 63%. Tens of thousands of homeowners in Texas, a state chartered backstop plan. Kentucky, which was hammered by storms, including Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, said their premiums are being driven up. California homers can qualify by discounts by complying with the state's Safer from Wildfire Framework, a 10-step guide to safeguarding property after they can only hope to get their policies renewed. All right, so let's just confirm and go through the premeditation of this act of genocide, murder. And this is proof positive. This is all you need to know, really, that this was planned and staged. So this is the Fire Weather Research Laboratory at San Jose State University, and this is an article from spring-summer 2019. And here is him, Mr. Clements, in climatology we'll get into in a minute, but look at behind him, the Paradise Fires, and here's their LiDAR truck with their little wind thing on top of it, but look at how massive those flames are. Supposedly coming from the Sierras at 12,000 feet, going east to west, with the winds we'll get into in a minute. But so this is November 2018, while firefighters, first responders, and local officials worked to evacuate survivors and salvage the remains. A group of San Jose State University scientists gathered data using meteorological instruments on the back of a research truck 100 feet from the flames of the deadliest wildfire in California history. How did he know to be there in the morning at 8:30 in the morning when the times of the fires began? How did he know from San Jose State to come up there? Spearheaded by Associate Professor of Meteorology and Climate Science Craig Clements, with Jesuit behind it, the Fire Weather Research Laboratory is the only team of its kind in the United States. So they set up this team, the only kind of its in the United States, and that's important to understand what I'm going to get to later. But the only program in the nation that trains wildfire meteorologists, Clements is driven by a desire to understand how fires create their own weather, underground lightning, and to what extent their behavior can be predicted. Well, just call up the guys doing it and says, what are you going to attack next? Clements estimates that he's collected data on at least 24 wildfires since the lab was established, always being there when the fire started because he knew they were going to be coming. He needs to be as close to the smoke plumes and the height of fire as possible without getting in the way of the first responders and putting anyone at risk. So he was there with the first responders. Here he is on his truck again showing, here I am, take a picture, take a selfie, come on. All right, so during a fire incident, they use LiDAR, and that's light emitting, I forget what the acronym is, but this is how they can see through the fires. They can see through clouds using LiDAR. They're using it down in South America to find many cities in the Amazon that were buried. By attaching LiDAR to a truck bed, Clements and his team have adapted a unique technique for observing the dynamics of the smoke plume while the LiDAR scans, collecting information on plume height, location, atmosphere. In 2019, Clements had obtained additional grant funding to purchase radar. So after the incidents, he got more funding. He explains that it's natural, even healthy, for fires to occur periodically. Really. During that feverish weekend in Paradise, Clements was joined by undergraduate researcher Jackson Paladin, meteorologist, graduate researcher Matthew Brewer, who collected wildfire data and communicated with the incident commander, relaying weather information and moving when the situation demanded. So they already had connections to the incident commander in Paradise at the attacks when they were going on. He's relaying information, so that means it was already coordinated. Premeditation of murder. Here's your proof positive. As they witnessed survivors fleeing, I'm going to take a selfie again. Look at the survivors fleeing. I'm going to take a selfie. He saw neighborhoods burn and watched firefighters and first responders trying to make sense of limited paths out of Paradise. No, they were prevented from leaving, as I've documented, and I've interviewed many people say they were prevented from leaving. With foreigners were brought in. Foreign police were brought in. Clements' team was monitoring LiDAR and adjusting amidst the climbing flames. Oh, good for you. So in 2018, before the Paradise tragedy and not long after the car fire burned through Redding, the federal government cut the Joint Fire Science Program, an interagency collaboration that supported hundreds of research projects focused on fire mitigation and prevention. So they created it specifically for these fire attacks in California. Clements says it's critical to cut greenhouse gases and stop global warming and reduce our carbon footprint. Toeing the line, folks, toeing the line. This was premeditation, and here's your prima facie evidence. Call up Mr. Clements at San Jose State University and ask that guy why he was there, and how did he know to be there with his team, and how did he know to be there with the incident commander. Please, follow up with this. This guy needs to be held accountable. Everybody needs to be held accountable in this. So just a quick sidebar. This last week, they did another attack. Supposedly up in Quebec with fires, 250 fires, started out of nowhere, came from nowhere, and all of a sudden the winds blew it all the way down to New York City so they could get their photo ops, and they turned the skies bright orange, where other areas didn't have the orange coloring. This was very specific and very much a part of their agenda, which they began in Paradise in 2018. Check this out. And everybody living in Northern California remember this. So when the Paradise fires hit, they laid out a chem fog for 2 weeks over California. Spikes of metal contaminants, including lead, were in the wildfire smoke. All right, so this was laid out for 2 weeks. I got in a plane, I flew up, it was over 2,500 feet thick. And so what I want to point out here real quick is, if you see this little image right here, that's Lake Tahoe. So you get a perspective size. Nevada's right here, California here, Paradise right here. So you see these fires, and Lake Tahoe is 11 miles wide by 22 miles long, to give you perspective. All right, and here's Nevada right here, and here's the plume coming out from the fires in Paradise on that day. And you can see the DNA trail. This was released all west. Again, we got 12,000-foot peaks, and they said the fires went from east to west. We never get winds from east to west. You got the 12,000-foot Sierras that block the winds coming east to west. North, yes. South, yes. West, yes. I windsurfed extensively, and no winds have ever come from the east. It just doesn't happen. But here they're saying the thick smoke that blanketed much of California for 2 weeks, conserving level of toxic metal contamination. So the metal they use to steer the weather wherever they want. But this is a picture to show you premeditation for the Quebec incidents that just happened last week. So again, here's the book Paradise Lost. That's their playbook about the fallen angels coming down when the war in heaven, and better to rule in hell than to serve in heaven. And that's what the satanic entity is incarnated into the blue bloods. That's why you have the blue bloods, because they have more copper in their veins. And that's why they keep their bloodlines available to all. So this is again, more proof. Why did they torch Paradise? Well, Paradise Lost is about Satan's victory over God when he tempted Eve with the forbidden fruit, which led Adam and Eve being expelled from Paradise and their subsequent fall. Expelled from Paradise. That's what they're doing. The fire started on the 8th of November, and it was 8 days after Satan's expulsion from Paradise that Satan returned to tempt Adam and Eve with the fruit of forbidden knowledge. The 8th is also 1 day before the 9th of November of 2018, 9/11 year, Therefore, the fire started on the eve of 9/11, Adam and Eve, and the fall of paradise. Another Luciferian ritual. Thoughts and prayers to all the victims indeed. So, again, the death toll, whatnot. Here's Cal Fire Chief, and I was going to interview a guy, and something happened to him, but he was being hired before the fire incidents to be a sniper. He was a sniper guy, and he'd fled, and they found him, and I couldn't interview him. But this is mass murder. I mean, they said 85 died. Originally it was 86. What do you do in a restaurant? You 86 it, throw it out. 11 people missing. And again, that adds up to 9/6. The blaze broke out in the morning of the 8th, forced the evacuation of 52,000 people. All right, 52,000 people supposedly evacuated. All right. And this is their calling sign. They hit the different areas, and they love to hit the different calling signs. And remember the evergreen, everything's green, Greenville. They attacked Greenville, and here's Paradise. They're burning up the sign. And then this is up in Whiskey Town. They're burning up the sign. That's their call signs. Okay, let's burn up the signs and show you we're burning up the areas and do it around where the towns are. All right, and this is the wind profiles. And this is kind of important because the wind profiles are everything. And you can see the fire footprint matches the redevelopment plans in 2017 set up by the City Council of Santa Rosa. How did they know? And here you have the California fires that are being started all over the area of California. And then the wind conditions, this chart right up here shows the winds. And I've been watching geoengineering for a long time. They had 170 fires that day on October 7, 2017. And 9 counties, 170 fires. There was no storms. There was no wind profile. And all of a sudden the winds get up to 75 miles an hour. And then they dropped again. Same thing with the Geyserville fires. You see the temperature drop to create the cold plasma, and then they create the directed energy weapons. All right, so the woodpeckers and California fire, privately owned pole. It's the poles, the fallen poles, lines that weren't hurricane strength fell over. It's all about the PG&E poles. All right, so check out this. This is California fire, Kem Pimla, talking about the winds. All right, and he says it traveled at 1 football field per second. The fires traveled. That's football field is 100 meters, 100 yards, 100, and so to travel at that speed, it would be traveling at 205 miles an hour, coming from the like I said, the mountains in the east, which never happens in California, but nobody ever questions that. And again, so they come up with the name the Diablo winds and Firenado. They come up with these names to say how it came. The Diablo winds, Diablo the devil, and the Diablo winds are south of the paradise. So how did the Diablo winds being south get up to the east and then come over the hills and come down the mountains into the paradise fires at 205 miles an hour unexpectedly? And by the way, PG&E did not turn off the power with anybody because the winds were not high enough to warrant turning off the power because there was not enough winds. Yet that's what they base everything on, the winds, the winds, the winds, and the fire tornado. So this is the fires in California that happened before the Paradise fires, the year before I was talking about. I was down in Santa Rosa. I saw blue beams being shot down. I didn't know what was going on. We were evacuated, had to go out to the coast. And oh, by the way, the federal government did not turn on the emergency alerts because they didn't want to panic anybody. All right. So here's the fires, again, coming from the east to the west, and they came down Mark West Road. They jumped the 6-lane freeway 101, and they burned out the Kmart, and they burned out the Arby's, but they didn't touch the fire station. How could that be? So again, the wind gust, the wind gust, the wind gust, and again, coming from east to west, the winds were not, the profiles were not there the day before. There was nothing predicted about winds, and all of a sudden they show up. All right. This is something I took pictures of, and I went up there and I interviewed a gentleman who told me about the technology. And this is the morning of the fires. And these cars were pulled over by OnStar. Bumper, you know, if you're in a fire and you're trying to flee, do you park bumper to bumper? Do you pull over to the side of the road? No. You get out of your car and you run. So he told me that these cars were pulled over by OnStar and then they were torched individually. And I looked in some of these cars and I saw bones in the springboards. I did not have the guts to look in this bus, but apparently there's children going to school. It was 8:30 in the morning. They were going to school and they torched them in their cars. Pre-planned, meditated murder. And again, pulled over to the side of the road. Who pulls over to the side of the road? You get out of the car and you run if your life is in danger. You don't care. So that's another proof positive. And again, we call it forest fires, but these forest fires that allegedly came from the forest, and here's a 100,000-foot Kmart that was torched from the inside, yet the trees on the outside weren't affected at all. And all these dots were buildings that were burned, but other buildings were saved and not had happened at all. So this fire right here, the Kmart was right next to it. They didn't rebuild, but right next to the Kmart, you had these attacks on the Arby's restaurant, the Applebee's restaurant, but the fire station was left alone. And it's the same thing I saw up in Paradise. They did not touch the fire stations. They did not touch the Adventist hospital. They did not touch the Freemason buildings. And the houses next to it were torched. Now here's another picture proof positive. This house was cut in half. This house was torched. This house was fine. This house was cut in half. This house is fine. Trees are still fine. Sliced in half by directed energy beams and weapons. And here are these pictures I took up in Paradise from underground lightning. ULF, look it up, underground lightning. This is how they targeted the homes and burned them from the inside out. Not the outside in, the inside out. All right? So, oh wait, let me go back because there's one important point I want to make here about the fire, jumping the freeway. So here we have in the Mark West and Santa Rosa these fires that allegedly crossed 101. They're saying that the embers jumped across the freeway and torched these buildings. It wasn't a fire, it was the embers from the fires. Here, the embers of the fires is what torched these buildings. This is the official story. It was the embers. And as the gentleman that I interviewed who worked on the technology says, the embers are cold plasma. And I interviewed people and they said, yeah, we could pick up the fire embers. It wasn't hot at all. And this is why you see the anomalies before the attacks. The temperatures will drop precipitously before the attacks because they got to create the cold plasma atmosphere to generate and excite the molecules so they can make their lasers work. You can look up the technology if you don't believe me. All right, so back to these holes in the ground and holes in the wood. So this guy Emerson, the largest largest tree holder in the world, has more land than what's his face, CNN guy, Ted Turner, that he owns more land than. And notice how they burn the trees from the inside, underground lightning right here. Okay, see the hole right here? See underground? This is why because they saved the wood. And immediately when I went up there, when they finally let us in, they closed Paradise for a month. It was a military operation. You could not get in. And they closed it for a month. We could not get in there. They had military there. Deborah Tavares was able to get in with a military pass. We went up with Matt Dankin and John Lord, 20-year fire captains each in California to look at the anomalies. And they had guts to post their videos on what they saw was not anything they've been trained to understand. Nothing like that. And here's another one. I saw many of these holes in the ground. This is a madrone tree with these holes in the ground where the lasers either came from the underground or they came from the top and went zap, zap, and zap. All right, and here is your proof positive. This is a picture I took. It's about 2 miles south of Paradise on the Eel River. And here's a car completely torched. Tires are gone, right? Car's completely torched on cement. Here's all the trees that are fine. Yet here's their lasers, zap, zap, zap. It looks like avalanches, zap, 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 zap. Were they testing their lasers before they attacked Paradise and doing it as a tune-up? But here's your proof positive. Take this to any fireman, take this to anybody and show them this and say, is this a fire profile that you've ever seen before? And if they're being honest with you, they'll say no. All right, again, more anomalies, more anomalies. Let's not forget, folks, people were murdered. Let's not forget people can't rebuild. Let's not forget they're taking away our homes and not letting us be in them anymore because we can't get insurance or the costs get too high. And I guarantee you property taxes are about to go nuts because we're going to have to pay for the government debt, massive debt. So here, just look at these pictures again, and you can see homes being torched, some homes being torched, all homes being torched, building across the street. Hey, it's okay, but they didn't get hit. How does this happen on forest fires? And where are all the fire captains speaking out? How come they're not speaking out? Because their lives are in danger. Firemen are getting huge carcinogenic mercury poisoning from going into these toxic fires. And they all know it. When I've spoken to them, they nod their head, yeah, but they don't want to know more. It's this cognitive disassociation. It's amazing. Many of the fire captains I've spoken to, they just glaze over. Like, who are you? They don't look at the evidence. They just look at you. Who are you? All right, so again, here's premeditation. This is around the world. The 9/11 buildings, Twin Towers were taken down by directed energy weapons, 105 stories demolished with super steel infrastructure in the middle and steel infrastructures. Never before has a fire brought down any towers like that. Came down in 10.3 seconds. And everybody says, oh, the demolition, the blast. No, the blasts were to make sure the metal buckled, but they use directed energy weapons. And here around the world, we're seeing directed energy weapons. And this is 9/11 right here, where there's cars, very similar profile to Santa Rosa and Paradise, where cars are flipped over in the roof. What kind of fire flips 3,000-pound cars on their roof? I'll wait. And I'll wait some more. And again, proof positive. Here's Lockheed Martin with their website talking about using lasers, and they got a hole in the middle of the car with a laser that they shot from above, right? And then here's your straight line. Here's lasers. These were actual pictures taken of lasers coming down. Hey, Dane Wigington, look at the pictures, Dane Wigington, Geoengineering Watch. Hey, Dane, look at the ball field, at Cardinal Newman ball field with these straight lines and fire. Hey, Dane, why did this happen? Oh, Dane says it's not directed energy weapons, and Dane's with Geoengineering Watch, and Dane's with RFK saying, hey, and Dane's doing the thing with the vaccines, but he doesn't promote it anymore. Dane Wigington is a total shill. Please look at his background. Please look at his experience. He has none. He has no background. He won't tell you where he went to school. He won't disclose any of that information, but trust the science and don't listen to others unless they're credible sources. Dane Wigington, you are not a credible source. You are a shill for the other side, the other team. And here's fires going up the hills. And I bought land from Dane Wigington. I moved up there because I trusted him and I knew, and then I found out who he really was. And I moved away, and he went after me, he went after my girlfriend. He's a bad guy, folks. Bad guy. All right, so Geyserville. So then they hit 2019, they hit Geyserville. And Geyserville has a steam, uses steam allegedly to power, for power, but it's really to use in the air to create artificial weather so they can steer the weather. That's what's there. But they've been running out. They've been running out of the geysers. They haven't been producing as much. So then they got the idea to take the sewer pipes from Santa Rosa and Lake County and pump the sewer, our waste, into Geyserville. So literally, when they're shooting these wet surface air coolers, or what nuclear plants are, shooting it up in the air to create the weather they need, they're literally, when it rains down, they're literally raining our own stuff, feces, back down on us. They're so perverted. And remember, Bohemian Grove is only probably 30 miles west of here. So here you see again circle fires. What causes circle fires, folks? What causes all this, grapes and everything, but the homes are built of fire? Why doesn't the brush catch fire? How do these embers move like this in circles? Firemen, please answer me. Let me know what you find out. And a big tribute here to a man we lost, DEW'd2De. And he said he used a lot of my work to come up with this cover story. And he was a fine artist, and I think he got taken out. But again, the temperatures to melt porcelain, to melt iron, to melt steel, all 3,000 degrees plus. A tempered glass windows, 2,500, 3,000 degrees. The hottest fire on record. Hottest forest fire on record is only 1,724 degrees. So how did this happen? Again, the trees are fine. The homes are torched. Thousands and thousands missing. Thank you, David, you missed. So then in 2020, we had 33-degree Freemason Ronnie Howard, remember Opie, did a mockumentary on rebuilding Paradise. I waited an hour and a half to try and get a call because I said they were going to take questions, and they didn't take any questions. But here again, the sign burning. Notice the sign cut in half and the burning on the one side. To be all name implies. And rebuilding. And it was a total hit piece, National Geographic, setting the tone that the unknown fires caused by climate change, we must do this, and everything. Never mentioning once geoengineering. never mentioning once that these fires had anomalies or temperatures that were beyond the pale of anything they'd ever seen. Never mentioning once that the people couldn't leave the properties. They were set inside. The police, the Paradise police, told people not to leave because there was no incident, and then all of a sudden the incident was upon them, and they couldn't do anything about it. Like I said, they were blocked from leaving. This was murder. Please don't forget. And it's now they're using climate change, and they're doing all these tornadoes, and now in Quebec to bring it down to the East Coast as well. And this is going to be part of their climate action plan to get everybody on climate credits in your 15-minute cities, so you're not going anywhere because your climate credit is not allowing you to. This is all part of their scheme and their master plan for the overall takeover of humanity and complete control of humanity by the World Economic Forum, introducing the central bank digital currency. So we're all going to be on a synthetic money system that's only going to be accessed if you allow access to your device. So in closing, I want to play this song, and this song talks about attacking paradise. Can you name the band?
Down in the crowded bar, down in the crowded bar, out for a good time. Can't wait to tell you all what it's like up here. They call it paradise. I don't know why. Somebody let the mountains low. All the time got
Now, note here in the song, Malibu got hit on the same day as Paradise. Let's know.
when the chilly winds blew down across the desert, through the canyons of the coast to the Malibu, where the pretty people play, hungry for power, to light their neon ways, give them things to do. Some rich man came and raped the land, and nobody caught him. Put up a bunch of ugly boxes, and Jesus people bought him. They call it paradise, the place to be. They watch the hazy sun sinking in the sea. Up about the grand design of what is yours and what is mine, 'cause there is no one nearby to you, but we have got to make it here. We satisfy our endless need and justify our bloody deeds in the name of destiny, in the name of God. And you can't see them there on Sunday morning. They stand up and sing about what it's like up there. They call it paradise. I don't know why. Call someplace paradise. Kiss up goodbye.
Kiss It Goodbye. 1968, the song came out. Kiss It Goodbye. This is how long they've been premeditating